It's no secret that I love science fiction and romance, so today's episode is going to be a combination sci-fi romance. Hello and welcome to UpperPen. My name is Dakota, and I interview someone in the book world every week. And if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, please consider subscribing. Next week, I'm talking with Mackenzie Reed about her adult debut novel. I hope this email finds you in hell. But today I am again talking with Constance Fay about her newest book, Havoc, which is book four of the Uncharted Hearts series. So thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
For folks who might not know what the Uncharted Hearts books are, do you have a little elevator pitch?
Sure. I'm terrible at elevator pitches, by the way. I had a great one for Calamity, which is the first book of the Uncharted Hearts series, and then it all fell apart. So for Calamity, the first book in the series that I'm not here to talk about, the the elevator pitch or the snippet or whatever was Calamity Jane in space with sex. So it takes so the series itself follows a crew of planet scouters. So what they do professionally is that they explore new planets and look at their viabilities for corporate takeovers, essentially. And this is a worlds with a corporatocracy. So they are run by very large families, and each family has some industry that they are in charge of. And so in the series, we follow a different character on the ship for each book as they find love, as they explore new places, as they have adventures, and as they unearth different parts of a very large conspiracy. And Havoc, the fourth book, is at the end of the series. Havoc takes place on what I'm calling Galactic United Nations. And it's being held on a giant space cruise ship. And so we have the leaders of each of these families coming together for a trial. And our crew is, of course, in the thick of it. And the main character of this book is Itzel, who's been a bit of a mystery in the other books. And she is the biologist of the ship. And she also happens to be a religious follower of the death goddess who does some assassination on the side. Itzel's got a lot going on, internally, externally, everywhere. She is strangely a ray of sunshine character for the follower of a death goddess. It's sort of like grumpy sunshine within one person. She's very at war with herself over what she thinks she should be versus what she inherently is. And she learns things about herself, learns things about the world, and finds a partner who finds her fascinating.
She finds him in a very particular way, though.
Yeah, well, and I'm going to get into that, but I will say she also meets him in this book in an elevator that's an incredibly long ride. And so that elevator pitch, while really long, was thematically appropriate because of the length of the elevator ride. So I'm going to pretend that was on purpose instead of just me not editing myself. But yes, she meets him in this book because he is a target for her assassination. So she has been told that he is going to make a catastrophic mistake, and the only way to save the world is to kill him. And she, is a woman of duty, a woman of action, and it leads to complications.
As romances are wont to do, simple things lead to complications.
Exactly. It'd be a very boring book. It's like she killed him, the end.
Whoops.
And then the world was saved.
But I really like this book in particular because Itzel throughout the first three books was such a fascinating, strange character because you hear about this death cult a little bit, but you don't ever give us much in the other books.
Yeah, that was by design, and I will say it was a stupid design. Itzel was a character that I've loved. Itzel was a character that I find really fascinating. Um, but she was a character that I saved for last for her story for kind of two primary reasons. One that was both strategic, but one that was business strategic and one that was personal strategic.
Mhm.
So the personal strategic was that Itzel is a very complicated character, and I was like, future me is going to be better at writing her than current me. And so I was like, I'm going to push her toward the end. The business reason side of it, and this is the stupid one, is I was like, the most interesting, fascinating, cool character. Like, whenever I ask someone their favorite character, maybe Temper because of her mouth, but generally it's Itzel because she's got a lot going on. She's mysterious. She's funny, but in kind of a different way. And so I was like, I'm going to keep her for the end because that's going to keep people going. That's going to keep the readers turning the pages. That's going to guarantee a fourth book in the series. And spoiler alert, it did not. So strategically, that was not necessarily a great plan to save the best for last. Any aspiring authors or writers, pay attention here. Put the best up first. Like if you've got the best, show the best. Because there's no guarantee for that the last will happen. And so put the best up first because there will be a new best, right? Like what you think is the best at a given point in time doesn't mean it's going to be the best when you get to it. Not that I'm saying it's not the best, because of course it is, but I'm just saying that there will always be a new best. So you can, if you're not ready to write a book, that's fair. Like sometimes you look at a plot or a structure, a character, and you're like, I haven't unlocked this yet. I'm not good enough to figure this out yet. That's a legitimate reason to put it aside. But the business reason that I did was it seemed very strategic at the time, but it was not the most strategic decision I've ever made.
I was incredibly surprised that they weren't going to publish the fourth book because it does feel from book one like it's four books. So I was a little peeved, is what we'll say.
Yeah, I mean, the series has had a lot of iterations in my head. When I originally conceptualized it, it was actually way more books. But we would return to Temper and Arcadio every other book. And
Oh,
so Temper and Arcadio, they're the main characters in book one, Calamity, were going to be kind of touchstones as we went through this adventure. So they would get their book, and then Micah and Sin would get their book. And then we'd be back with Temper and Arcadio for book. And then Caro and Levi would get their book. And then we'd be back. So I was unfamiliar with publishing.
mhm.
And I was like, long series are great, right? They'll totally sell. And long series totally sell if you're an established author who makes a lot of money. Even then, these days, that's iffier. But if you are a debut author going in, you really need to be concise. I've talked to my agent, and she said these days it's kind of single books or duologies that are making a lot of the big splashes and getting most of the deals, not everything, obviously, but especially for debuts. And so she convinced me that like do a book for every character. That is what you should do. And I'm like, that's an excellent thing. That excellent idea. Uh, and so we made the original deal with the publisher for the first three books. And Calamity did pretty well by my, method. It was no, blockbuster. It was no New York Times bestseller. Like it was fine. Uh, Fiasco, maybe I doomed it by naming it Fiasco, did not, it's reviewed well, right? It's one of those things that people that read it liked it, but not that many people read it. It was hard to find.
Yeah.
Um, and by the time Chaos was coming out, I think my publisher, rightfully so, because they're in it to make money, right? They're in it for profit, and they would like to put good stuff forward for profit. And they loved the series and they loved the books, but they're just like, these are not doing what we need them to do. And for anyone that's listening that's curious that has read, that's why Chaos doesn't have an audiobook, because the audiobooks for the first two again, it was sort of like Calamity did pretty well. Fiasco didn't do as well. I think they're narrated by Paige Reisenfeld. They're really, really good audiobooks. It's just audiobooks are expensive.
Mhm.
And, the cost of producing an audiobook versus the profit they were going to make was not in their math best interests. So I gave them Itzel's book and it is a pitch and was like, here it is. And they're like, we love it, but and so it just the state of the market today, sci-fi romances aren't huge money makers, and they're trying different angles, right? Like we have Rebecca Thorne's newest release, Mossed in Space, that I think is doing a great job of feeling out if the cozy market is interested in sci-fi with their romance. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that. But I think that they're still trying to make it happen, but they're trying to put a whole lot of logs in the fire kind of to see which one will catch. And this series hadn't caught. And so I thought for a while it would just be done at 3.
Mhm.
And I, through a year of personal and professional complication, got to the point where I just said, why don't I put it out so I can have this bookend on the series, so I can have the story told. So if new people find the series, they won't be disappointed. So current readers won't be disappointed that it just stopped, because you always hear so many people saying, oh, I don't want to read the series until it's done because I don't want to be disappointed by the first 3 being the only books that exist. And I get that's also why the 4th book doesn't exist, is because people didn't read the first 3. But also, as a reader, I understand how disappointing it can be to have a series that you're following and it just doesn't happen. So I wanted my series to at least be complete.
I think in this particular case, because these are produced by, or the first three were published by Bramble, correct?
Correct.
So when you published the first one, Bramble was brand new. It was
Hmm.
not, so that imprint had to make a name for itself and it had to do it quickly, in my opinion.
They
Uh,
did.
and the other thing that I think is kind of like a hindrance to how this is sold is sci-fi romance is never, in my opinion, marketed well, ever. So it's just difficult to sell sci-fi romance.
It is. I think that there's many tricky things, but one of the tricky things about sci-fi and romance is that there are people like me and like you and who are primed for the genre, right? Who read sci-fi, who read romance, who are ready to go. But most people who read sci-fi exclusively are not romance readers. Most people who read romance exclusively are not sci-fi readers. And it's actually to a point that I think back when I was in school, right? And I majored in engineering. And in my major, when people had to take an English class, oftentimes they were terrified of it, right? It was like a phobia. And it goes the other way around too. Like English majors having to take math often have sort of this like, oh, I didn't do math. Math isn't like a knee jerk. I hate math. And I feel like it's that with the sci-fi and the romance sides of the community. Like the sci-fi readers are like, oh no, no, romance isn't for me as a knee-jerk reaction. And a lot of the romance readers are like, no, sci-fi is going to be 10 pages describing spaceship components and trajectories. And I don't want any part of that. And then it's going to be like misogynistic because they're like one exposure to sci-fi historically maybe was. And so I think that it it's an uphill market, right? You're marketing on an uphill slope instead of a downhill slope, so it's already built in that it'll be harder to do it. And then you've got some of the sci-fi markers, like the books behind you. I think their covers are gorgeous.
Mhm.
I've always loved their covers, but I've definitely had people come up to me in cons and be like, "Oh, this is about 2 robots falling in love." And I'm like, no, those are human people in spacesuits. Like, it could be about 2 robots falling in love. That's a lovely story. But these books are about human people. And so, again, people have these immediate reactions that are not even emotional. It's like something deeper. It's like instinctual almost, that they're just like, oh, I know what this is. and it's not for me. And I will say that some of my most surprising feedback has been, um, and going into this, I did not think this would be a population for me at all. But like male sci-fi readers, if they sort of accidentally pick up my book or on purpose do, I've had some like really positive feedback from them. And it was just sort of one of those things that I kind of assumed that my readers would by and large be women, perhaps in a sexist way. I assumed that. But, with the romance, you don't hear about many men who read, some men read romance, but you don't hear about many men that read romance, especially genre fiction romance or. So it's been interesting, but really gratifying to see, you know, different people that have come to it different ways.
And I'm glad that you did choose to end up putting this out, even though I have talked to so many self-published authors and it sounds horrifying to try and do. So I'm thrilled that you did it for us.
It was it was difficult, I will definitely say. I was talking about this yesterday with a friend, and I have a way of thinking that has both done me favors and done me disservices, where I hear about something and I'm like, how hard can it be? I'll do it. And, it can be great to be that confident and assume it's going to happen. And it can also lead you down really difficult paths because it's not like I ever assumed it was easy. I knew it was difficult. I was just like, well, I could do it though. Like, it'll be fine. And I did. So, like, it was fine. But it was definitely more complex and complicated and to be honest, expensive than I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of, you can do it on a whole scale, right? Like you can do it kind of fast and with really quick turnaround and with really low investment, or you can do it with a lot of editing and fancy cover art and that sort of thing. And so there are a lot of different ways you can go about it that hit different parts of the expenditure scale. If I wasn't completing a series, I might have gone on the cheaper end, but because I didn't want to have like a visible drop in quality or a drop in the cover art or something like that, I wanted to make sure that I kept things on as much of a level as I can. People can come to me after they read and tell me if I did that. But it definitely was more difficult than I thought it would be. I have spreadsheets. I have had so many really generous people in the industry that have given me pointers and advice. Rebecca Thorne, Carissa Broadbent, Rebecca Zanetti, they all have really been helpful with, hey, you need to do this. Here's a way to do that. They've all been so generous.
Yeah. And I really do think it kind of takes a community to do these things.
It does, because there's so many little things that I mean, I guess you could Google it and get most of it, but that's a community that did that.
Yeah.
So, it's still just knowing about copyright stuff and ISBNs, and that you don't just buy one ISBN, you buy the 10 pack, even though it's more expensive because you never use just one ISBN, even though you think you will going in. And so, all the things like that are tribal knowledge, sort of, but that are really, really important to know.
So thinking of the copyright in particular, how did you get this story to a point where you were allowed to self-publish it, I suppose? Because the first three are technically owned by Bramble, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they passed on it. So it's mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it. That was it. That was
Yeah.
and it's okay to like, it's just you were allowed to just say this is the rest of Uncharted Hearts, I assume.
hmm
So, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Because in theory, um, again, lawyers, please tell me if I'm wrong. That is my understanding.
Yeah.
In theory, if I bring in new readers with Havoc, they are profiting from that too because people will
Mhm.
go and look at the other ones. So, it's probably not going to make them tons of money, but it might make them some, and so it's something that they chose not to publish. Um, so it's something that I can.
Yeah. I do think that traditional publishers have been, I don't want to say pillaging, but I mean pillaging self-published areas, right? So they're pulling out so many self-published people that have done well.
Mhm.
And it seems so strange to me that they are doing this. And it seems like they don't want to, I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's it makes sense to me
Yeah.
because they're a verified investment, right? They are an investment that they know will pay off. Um, and the thing that I think is really interesting is if you are a publisher, and I'm not saying anything like negative about my publisher, right? My publisher was really, really amazing. But if you are a more predatory publisher than I had, and you get someone like me that was a debut author that had no experience in the publishing industry, uh, when you're doing those negotiations, even if you're working with an agent, you have more of an upper foot than these indie publishers. They know everything about the industry. They know where they can make their own money, and they know how to negotiate a really, really powerful bargain. And so I think that the publishers are going to be, I mean, they're making a lot of money with indie publishers whose stuff they have bought, but they are making money in a way that is actually much more even than the relationship has possibly gone in the past for some of those situations. So I think that it's good because a lot of the indie publishers are really able to be really good business people about it and to understand the industry enough to say, for instance, I want to own my own cover art.
Mhm.
And then I can do whatever I want with the cover art. I can merchandise it. I can do this. I can do that. As opposed to, like, it never occurred to me that was even an option to own my own cover art. I was just like, yeah, you're doing cover art? Wonderful. I love it. Great. Let's do that. And so, there's all sorts of things that, they can say, okay, you can have my book, but you can only have it in this one modality. Like you can only have hardcover or something like that. And so I think a lot of them are keeping rights and giving other rights. And it's really interesting how that has evolved in the industry too. I think it is in some ways unfortunate. They're still picking up debut authors. They're still picking up some authors that have never been published before, but it is less. I think it means that people are taking fewer risks, but I guess you could argue that the indie market is what's taking the risks now.
Yeah.
Um, so the risks are still being taken, they're just not being taken in that large scale way. And I don't know. It's definitely a tide change in the industry, but I don't know if it's bad or if it's good. I know that it would have been bad for me because there's a reason I didn't indie publish any of my earlier books,
Mhm.
because Calamity was not the first book I wrote. I had written a bunch of books, and to the aforementioned, like how hard can it be? Um, I know about myself that I think most things that I do are better than they are. And so I got, my first book done and I was like, this is brilliant, and immediately started querying agents. It was not brilliant. It was not good. I want to be very clear. This was not a good book. No, it wasn't a good book. Even with editing, it was not a good book. And it was the best thing I'd ever written, which does not make it a good book. But I know that about myself. And I was like, I don't trust myself to self-publish
Mhm.
because I don't know personally where the cutoff of good enough is. And I personally would not have wanted to put something like that first book out in the market. And then that's your first thing. That's people, what they see, that's there always and forever. I think other people have the opposite problem where they're writing brilliant prose and they're like, I don't know if it's good enough and I don't want to, So I think both sides of that, having a professional voice that's chiming in and saying, we think this is good enough, even if it doesn't sell. For me, it was like, okay, I know that it can be good enough, and then I can go indie, with a future thing. Whereas before, I definitely would have splashed all sorts of garbage out in the world because of my brain.
Mhm.
Plenty of people don't have that problem and they can indie pub really, really good books. But I know I would have indie pubbed not good books.
I okay, yeah. So I could talk about this for so long, but I do want to talk about Havoc. So I'm going to put a pin in the idea of self-publishing and what you think you would have done. Um, because I really like how you write and I really like these stories and I like that you're marrying these ideas of action and sci-fi with a romance. And so Itzel being the main character here as an assassin who does not want to be an assassin. I think it's such a fun story. But I guess I assume it's fun to write because she's fun.
It is. It was a little challenging for me for a really dumb reason. Um, Itzel doesn't swear. Uh,
Oh.
And my other characters do. So it's not like it's a profanity-free book, but Itzel doesn't. And it made me realize how easy of a crutch profanity can be in writing. If you're looking to like hit a statement extra hard, or if you're looking to do something like that, it's really easy to do something profane and a little bit shocking, and that, lightens a moment. It's actually a really useful tool. But if you have a character that doesn't do it, you're suddenly like, oh, this is a little harder. Like I have to work at this a little bit more. So she was actually a little bit difficult in a way I didn't expect her to be. But no, she was very fun to write because she, you know, all of my characters are big heroes. That's kind of the point of every book, is that everyone is a big hero. And not that the women are the big damn heroes. And not like the guys are just, fanning themselves in a corner, but that the guys are there to support them, to participate, but that the women are the big heroes. Um, in some books, it can be the other way around, and that has a place. I don't love it personally, but that's a personal taste thing. So I like for the action. I mean, in book three, Caro is not action lady, right? She is a scientist. She's an engineer. She is a tech person, but action can happen around her and to her. And so it's still exciting. And getting to Itzel finally, who is very much action lady. But then to give her a plot that means that she doesn't get to perform action in the way that she normally would all the time. Because like if you are fighting people who are mind controlled and you kill them, you're just killing a person, right? You're not killing a bad guy. And it's not even real, like it's self-defense, but not really, because they weren't attacking you.
Mhm.
And so she has to, be more, challenge herself a little bit more with bad guys that she might more easily be able to defeat, but she makes it harder on herself, which was fun to write too.
But her opposite is Lucian. I hope that's how you pronounce it. And he is kind of like he's a higher up in the society. And I want to say the cover calls him a prince or like prince-like, because it's not a monarchy, but but who like how is he different than the other male characters in these books? Because you have a lot of male characters.
Hmm. Yeah, Lucian is he is on the Chandra family council. which is their governing body. It was a little bit tricky on the cover because saying he's a corporate governing head is not sexy. And given that this is a corporatocracy, his equivalent position is a prince or a co-ruler or a king, and king co-ruler, like they didn't have the ring. So I went with corporate prince. I have had people ask me what that means. And so but I think one of the primary differences between him and the rest of my male main characters, is scope of responsibility. So in the first book, we had Arcadio, who was part of a family, but was never intended to rule it, right? He was meant to support the person who was ruling it. Micah in the second book is a medic. He has lives on his hands. He has responsibility, but it's small scale responsibility. It's like one or two people, at a given time. The third book, Levi, well, he spent a lot of it being mind controlled, so not much responsibility. And then he was dealing sort of with personal accountability, but he doesn't have huge responsibilities. Lucian has worlds that are his to take care of. And he feels that weight. And it makes him more, I think, thoughtful than some of the other characters would be. And I think more than any of the characters, except for maybe more than Micah, he is a caretaker because of that. Like he takes his responsibilities seriously. He wants to do that. It's not just a responsibility. It's sort of how he is. It's how he's wired. And that was interesting. I had two characters who needed a whole lot of care that were narrators, and one was Sin and one was Itzel. And I put both of them with the caretakers because I think both of them needed someone who could, you know, get them out of their head a little bit. And, they're in their head for different reasons in different ways. But I think that, not that Lucian is not physically commanding or physically capable. He has physical capabilities, but this book in a lot of ways was about I'm going to step back. Caro's book, Chaos, was about taking someone who had mental capabilities and teaching her that those were also important, and as important as being the big gunslinger. This one is teaching the big gunslingers that their other talents have value too. And so I think for both Itzel and Lucian, to some extent, it's their journey through learning how to improve themselves, I guess, but how to value all parts of themselves.
And it's interesting because Itzel seems pretty, like she seems pretty confident in a lot of ways throughout the books, but this book makes it feel like she has more that she's just not saying.
I think all of my characters are confident, but being confident doesn't mean you don't have things that you are not confident in, right? So I think Itzel is very physically confident. She is very confident in the people she loves. She is confident in how she navigates the world. Where she fails in confidence is due to a mistake she made a very long time ago in her religious order, and feeling like that has put her out of step with her goddess. And so this book is really a crisis of faith for her, as she tries to figure out, because it's deeply important to her. Her faith is deeply important to her, and she feels like she let her goddess down. And she has spent a lot of her life trying to make up for that mistake. And so I think in this book, as she realizes more, as she experiences more pertaining to that and pertaining to her order and pertaining to other people in her order, and learns more, it's like what happens when you can no longer be part of a faith, but you still believe. And so I think that's where her lack of confidence comes in is what have I been wrong this whole time? Is it real? Is it not real? That kind of thing, which I think is a question a lot of us maybe go through very in different ways than Itzel. I generally it has less to do with murder, but I think that especially because her religious order is very pro-murder, which most are not. But I think that she does lose some confidence in this book, but I think it is specifically pertaining to her beliefs and her faith as opposed to some other things.
I think this is why romance in particular is very engaging to me because it can be a story about, taking down a corporate oligarch, but it's also a personal story, usually about how can I connect with another person. And I
Mhm.
find that story is often more interesting to me because I fail to connect with people all the time. So I feel like this is like why I like romance. Like the other stuff is fun too, though. I mean, don't get me wrong. But I don't know. I think if people framed it more as like a feeling or like connection
Mhm.
instead of just sex,
Right.
it might
Because
be different.
so much romance these days has a real focus on found family.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that everyone's looking for, even in other genres. Like, what is Mission Impossible but a group of found family? Like, what is Fast and the Furious? I'm just going over like big movies that were on some streaming service, but like, what are all of these the Avengers is found family? Like, what are all these things but found family? And but to your point, making connections and finding people that are different from you, but are interesting and can make you learn and grow. And I'm going to bring it back because I think we talked about this the last time, and I'm never going to not talk about Farscape. That you've got and that one, it's like a ship of people that hate each other and they're still found family. And grow and do stuff through that. And so I think your point's really good that we gravitate toward properties that have those connections, that have those feelings of being part of a group. And especially as our culture becomes less and less about that, as we become more virtual, as we become, as AI comes in and people are now having some of the conversations with AI that they would have with a family member or a therapist or a friend. As we become more disconnected in real life, I feel like we seek it out more and more in our fictional life. So like we still have that need. We still want that.
Yeah. I feel like if a lot of things are marketing, right? Like so if Game of Thrones had been marketed as a fantasy romance, which it absolutely is in every
Mhm.
book, like it would have hit different, right? So the idea that these are mostly adventure with personal connection to me is kind of the sweet spot of it's not alienating people and it's not frightening other people off.
I will admit that I am not great at writing romance. My I I am good at writing sex. I am not good at writing romance. I want to be distinct in my words there. Sex is easy to write. It's basically a fight scene, right? It is physical actions, it is reactions. It's easy to write because it is active. And where I sometimes struggle is at the deeply emotional level. Because as a person, I'm a fairly guarded person emotionally. And so, when I was working with the editors at Bramble, my notes were nearly always like, what are they feeling right now? Maybe they should talk before they go to bed. Maybe they should have a heart to heart here. And I'm like, a heart to heart? Who's flaying their insides open for mass consumption? That's terrible. But I think, having a finger on that vulnerability is important and it expands on the book. But I do think, sort of to that point, these books are sci-fi action movie or action books
Yeah.
that have romance in them. You know, they are marketed as sci-fi romances, and they have happily ever afters. You know, they but they don't, like, a true romance follows a certain structure, and the romance drives the plot. And in none of these books does the romance. Maybe you can make an argument for Fiasco because there's like the lie of it all that's happening with Sin and Micah that is driving some of the plot, but like really the romance is not driving the plot in any of these books. The plot is the political system, the plot is what the characters want. Um, and then there's also romance. So I think it is probably fair to say they are sci-fi action books that have a strong romance element as opposed to that they are romances. But I don't want to, make romance readers not read it. So romance readers, there's a lot of that there.
I think it's just a good combination. All of these books have like a larger political structure, things are happening, but you also bring it back to the ship and the same people that are on it and how are they getting on with their lives after, terrible family or military coups, things like this.
The usual.
Yeah. So I don't know. I love this found family aspect, but I do think so many things can be called whatever we whatever we want, really. So I want folks to understand that these are more than just romance, but they do have romance in them.
They do. They do. Yeah. Don't listen to them in the car with your kids. But I mean, if your kids are older, maybe up to you.
One of my friends picked up a T. Kingfisher book. I don't know if you know who she is.
Mhm.
And he thought it was about paladins, like D&D, and it was very much a romance book. So he and his guy friend were just driving, listening to this.
Good. Good for them.
And they listened to the whole thing because it's a good story. It's just awkward, two dudes in a car.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It was not what they signed on for, right? It was not what they expected to be listening to in the car.
but to that like effect, these are more than what people might think they are.
Yeah, I like to think that.
And I I think this is a good ending to the series because you have this kind of like larger scale problem that has been kind of hanging over everyone for a little while. So I don't want to talk too much about what it is because I want folks to read it, but
I can talk a little bit about what it
yeah.
is. So, when last we left the crew, in Chaos, that could have been an ending because the big bad of that book sort of could have died. Like, it was left one of those, like, no body, no crime. So you're like, maybe he's gone, I guess, but maybe not. And this book takes place at his trial.
Mhm.
So he did not die. There was a trial, and they get their chance to present their evidence, to do all that. I enjoyed, a brief courtroom scene in Space Court. But I think that, you know, in the real world, the bad guys don't get their comeuppance as often as they should. And so I'm really happy that I got to write the fourth one, to put that pin in it and to make sure that that bigger arc, like, was resolved in a way that I think is satisfactory, at least that I think means that everyone got what was coming to them in one way or another.
Are you writing anything else right now? I know the book technically, as we're recording, hasn't come out yet. It will have been out by the time people can see this, but are you writing anything else?
uh yeah. Yes. It's I wrote something last year that may be on the shelf for quite a while. I did a I'll say kind of like Survivor in space. Um, it was not a romance. It had a cat that was connected to a person with a neural chip. It had a lot of really fun elements, but you know, during editing, hit some hitches. We'll see if anything ever comes of that. Right now, I'm working on a cozy sci-fi romance, which is part of why I'm excited to see how Lost in Space does. Uh, it's been interesting because my books, as we've talked about, tend to be very action and like they're high stakes, but they're ridiculous stakes, right? So I say that they're similar to cozies in that I think that they are not arduous reads, right? They are not generally tear jerkers. They are not super emotionally draining. I like to say that if a cozy is a mug of hot chocolate, that mine is like nachos with your friends. They're both things that like lighten the mood.
Mhm.
But cozy is very, very different, and cozy is really challenging. Again, like I was mentioning, using profanity as a crutch, using action as a crutch to keep things moving is also very possible. And in cozies, you really have to focus on the characters and the conversations and the craft and the emotions. And so it's been really interesting writing that after something that is so fast as the Uncharted Hearts series.
So you've taken all of your editor's notes to heart and you've written a book for them.
You know, I you gotta try, right? You gotta try different things and doing things differently. Sometimes it doesn't work, there is an authorial voice and like no one's probably tuning in for Stephen King's cozy horror. Maybe they are. I don't know. There's you go to different places for different things, but I'm considering it a writing exercise right now. Like let's see what happens. Let's So th this is actually kind of a you heard it here first because I don't think I even told my agent yet. It's just what I'm working on.
And I do like these things that people work on that have not been published or, it doesn't mean that this is how they're going to be or that this is gonna be a thing. I hope it is, but
Yeah, well, I think that the last time we talked, in between when we talked and when it went live, was when I found out Havoc wasn't going to be um, published under
yeah.
Bramble. And I had to actually ask you at the end of the interview, like, hey, can you edit out that bit where we talked about how I couldn't wait for Havoc to come out next year? Because yeah, so you never know. Like the industry is filled with surprises, but it's fun working on something new.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what you do though. I really, really want cozy fantasy to be a thing, or more of a thing than it is.
Mhm.
I spoke to Rebecca Thorne about Lost in Space, and after that, I went to Reddit. There's a subreddit that I really like to stalk. I guess I don't interact much, but it's R print sci-fi, R print SF, and
Mhm.
I was like, hey, what other cozy sci-fis exist? And people
Yeah.
had very good like suggestions for me, so I don't think it's out of the realm of people like enjoying it, you know?
Yeah, I think it's like Becky Chambers has had some
Mhm.
really great books that I think would be classified as cozy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I was just at Sarah Beth Durst's release thing in Huntington Beach yesterday, and everyone there was so excited about Sea of Charm and or Charms, and we're so excited about the worlds that she's built and created, and I it's so wonderful to see people that are moved, by a book and that found it in a really hard time and, it made a difference to them. And I think that's kind of why we all tell stories is to share and to try to make that connection and make a difference. And when people are going through a challenging time in the world, I think it's great to have those things that do allow us to turn the volume down a little bit, that are sort of the cup of hot chocolate, that are the thing that lets you sleep at night.
I am just thrilled that you weren't put off sci-fi by a frustrating experience.
I actually did not start writing sci-fi. I started writing fantasy. And my first book that had any traction at all was in 2019, and it was late 2019 into 2020, and it was a space pandemic book that you will understand why that traction failed. And so after that, I wrote another fantasy that was sort of Six of Crows adjacent kind of fantasy. And then I just went back to sci-fi because I wanted to do something fast and light and fun, and that's the one that, you know, hit. And so I've fallen into the habit, I guess, of sci-fi. But no, I'd like to go back to fantasy. It's very similar, but still different. So it's something that I'll get back to eventually, maybe. But I love sci-fi, and I think that the fantasy market is so full. I think that the sci-fi market, granted, it doesn't have as many readers, but I still think it will someday, right? Like everyone keeps waiting for it to go over that downslope, and I think it's going to happen eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah, so don't mind me. I'll just keep like hurling my books into the void and hoping that at some point the void catches them.
Well, I am here. The void is here. So,
Yes. I would say like there have been so many people that, really did enjoy the series and appreciate it. And in a way, Havoc is a love letter to them and saying like, you know, this one's for you guys. This one is for, people that have been with it all the way and want to stay with it.
well, I hope it does really well. And I hope it recoups the cost of doing it because I do know that it can be so expensive and time consuming. But I do hope that people love it too.
Yeah, I hope so too. I think that I love it, and so that's important, but I hope that they do too, and that they think it's a good wrap up for the series. Although maybe there's potential for more.
I always like potential. So as long as it doesn't go Farscape potential, where we just got so many weird endings.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm not planning on doing the Calamity Wars at the end. And then like years and years of Calamity comics. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, someone throws me money, I will do the Calamity Wars and years of Calamity comics. I'll just try to, keep them tight and narrow. But yeah, I have a thought of possibly at least three more. Two that might be novella length, one that would be full length.
That would be really cool. Who would you follow?
Victor and Victory from
Oh,
Chaos, the mercenary twins.
yeah.
So I set up victories in Chaos. Uh, and that's part of why it can be shorter because I don't have to do the meet cute and all that stuff. Uh, and then my plan for the other one would be Estella Escajeda.
Okay. Okay. That's that would have to be a longer one, I would
Yeah,
assume.
yeah, that's the full length one.
Because there's a lot of characterizing that I think would need to happen around them.
Yeah, yeah, she is a very internal character. And so I think that it would be probably not as much dialogue, at least in the beginning, and a whole lot of introspection.
Well, if you ever write it, I am very down to read it. So, where can people keep an eye on what you're putting out and follow you?
Yeah, I'm on Threads and Instagram at Constance E. Fay. Some other Constance Fay got there before me. Um, they have a private account, so you can't stalk them, I don't think, but but yeah, Constance E. Fay. I'm on TikTok at Constance Fay. I will be honest, if you DM me there, I will never see it because I go long swaths of time forgetting I have a TikTok. I am on Facebook. uh, you will have the same problem there because I post on Instagram and it goes on Facebook, so I will never see anything that happens on Facebook. Um, let's see. I have a website, constancefay.com. For purchasing Havoc, for the short term, it will be available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Uh, at some point shortly after, I'm going to get Ingram Spark up and running, and it will be available on my website if people would like it signed or personalized. That will not go forever because I am not a machine. But for a while at least, then I think you'll be able to at least purchase from the website. And hopefully from bookstores, but that depends on bookstores ordering and that sort of thing. Uh, oh, and there will be an audiobook for this one. That will be out next year sometime because the audiobooks takes time to produce. So that will be Paige Reisenfeld will be returning to be the narrator for that audiobook. I'm very, very excited about that happening.
That is so cool that you got an audiobook out of this too.
Yeah, yeah. I talked with her about it and I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen. She's like, I want to be part of it. So we're doing it. And so I'm excited. I'm sorry about the chaos-shaped gap in audiobooks. Maybe when rights revert back to me, when slash if, I'll do something about it. But if not, you'll have get your partner or your friend or your I don't know, grocer, get someone to read it aloud to you if you would like the audiobook format, because that's the best I can do.
I like this image of some random poor meat counter person just reading.
Yeah. Oh, you're here for chapter 5? Okay.
I read ahead already, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. And you want the brisket?
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me again.
Yeah, it has been a pleasure as always.
And the book is out now, so you can find it on Amazon. And I would follow Constance on social media because that is the place you will find if or when it is available on your website. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. If you've enjoyed this conversation, consider leaving a comment about what you liked about these books because I love them and I really want to know that other people love them. So please just tell me. But I hope everybody has a lovely, lovely day. Bye.